Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Sinise, co-chair of the program committee of the Gallery Council of the Memorial Art Gallery. I'm happy to welcome you to our 5th Zoom presentation this year. Today is a first. We are opening our programs from now on to the entire MAG membership, and we are excited to have all of you here. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Gallery Council, our mission is to raise money and support for the art gallery. Over the 80 years since its inception, the Gallery Council has raised over $4 million to help support art acquisitions and conservation, scholarships for children to attend the creative workshop, and underwriting MAG exhibitions and special publications. Our projects include the Fine Craft Show, Arts and Treasures, Rochester's most prestigious garage sale. And on the weekend of April 23rd and 24th, we will bring you a new event called Art in Bloom in collaboration with the 7th District of the Federated Garden Clubs of Rochester. It will be a celebration of the combined beauty of art and floral design. You will see imaginative interpretations of art by local floral designers in conjunction with the Gallery Council. If you would like to volunteer with us, go to the Memorial Art Gallery website and click on Join and Give. There you will see the Gallery Council. Click there and join us. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Gaya Shakes, a member of the program committee, who will introduce our speaker. Gaya.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here to introduce you to Lee Koonce, who has served since 2016 as president and artistic director of Gateways Music Festival, a series of chamber and orchestra concerts featuring professional classical musicians of African descent. He has been on the Gateways board since 1997, and from 2009 until 2016, he served as chair of the festival's Artistic Programs Committee, a group of Gateways musicians who oversee the festival's programming. Prior to this appointment as president and artistic director of Gateways Music Festival, Mr. Koonce served as executive director of Ballet Hispanico in New York City for 2 years. And from 2006 to 2013, as executive director of 3rd Street Music School Settlement, the oldest and one of the largest community music schools in the nation. In addition, Mr. Koonce served as director of community relations for the Chicago Symphony Orchestra from 1996 to 2001. In this position, he was responsible for the creation and implementation of internal and external programs that enabled the CSO to reach more diverse communities. The Gateways Music Festival, which is based in Rochester, New York, attracts approximately 125 musicians from the United States and other parts of the world who perform before a combined audience of more than 7,500. For the first time this year in April, the orchestra will perform at Carnegie Hall. Gateways participants are professional freelancers, conservatory faculty, and members of nearly 20 major U.S. symphony orchestras. I would now like to present to you Mr. Koonce.
Thank you. Thank you, Gaya, for that warm introduction and the warm welcome from all of you. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to speak to the Gallery Council of the Memorial Art Gallery. I'd also like to give a very special thank you to Catherine, Susan, and Gaya for helping to organize today's presentation. I'd like to actually show a couple of slides, and so I'm going to ask if I might share my screen and start that now. Can everyone see?
Yes, you're all set, Lee.
Great, terrific. Thank you. I have long been an admirer of the Memorial Art Gallery since my days as a student at Eastman in the 1980s. And after a visit to the gallery in 2018, I learned that the gallery had a beautiful collection of works by artists of African descent. And after that visit, I wanted to find a way to connect Gateway's efforts to celebrate classical musicians of African descent with the gallery's collection of works by visual artists of African descent. So in 2019, for the 2019 festival, working with the amazing staff at the gallery, we were thrilled to be able to present one of our chamber music in the community concerts in the gallery's fountain court in front of the Italian Baroque organ to a standing room only audience. And in this photograph, you see our Gateways Brass Collective performing. This partnership also led to a new page on the gallery's website that features works in the gallery's collection by artists of African descent. If you've yet to see this section, I encourage you to check it out. It is incredibly impressive. And if it works here, I'm going to click on it because it really is fascinating to see the extraordinary collection that the gallery has of works by artists of African descent. And this goes on for several pages. And I encourage all of you to look at this incredibly impressive collection of works that are contained within the collection of the Memorial Art Gallery. Gay has already said some things about my background, so I don't want to go through more of that, but I am a graduate of the Oberlin Conservatory of Music and the Eastman School of Music in piano performance, and I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, and worked for the Chicago Symphony Orchestra while continuing to pursue a career as a freelance pianist in Chicago. As Gaya said, I've been the chair of the Artistic Programs Committee at Gateway since 2009, appointed by our founder, who I'll talk about in a minute, Arminta Hummings Dumasani, upon her retirement in 2009. And for those of you who know Arminta, she appoints people to things, so she didn't really ask me to be the chair of that committee. I got appointed to that committee in 2009. And then in 2016, and I'll talk about that later, I became the president and artistic director of the Gateways Music Festival. This morning, I'd like to organize my talk in 6 different parts. And I'm hopeful that Catherine will interrupt if there are questions that come in so that I can answer those kind of as we're going along. So please feel free to ask questions if you have any as I'm going through my presentation. But first, a brief overview video, which is about 4 minutes long, which I think is important because it really provides an overview about Gateways from the musician's perspective, which is a perspective you don't hear a lot because we mostly hear them performing and playing. Then I'll talk a bit about the festival's history and its mission, and what distinguishes Gateways, what makes Gateways special, and why is Gateways important. A little bit about our recent achievements, and then our core programs, and then what I hope will be the highlight to talk about the 2022 festival. And of course, at the end, for any questions that we've not had an opportunity to ask prior to that. So to begin with, I'd like to share this 4-minute video, which explains a lot about Gateways, its reason for being, its existence, and why it's important from the musician standpoint. So please join me in watching this video. People of African descent have been involved in classical music since the beginning.
This is not about diversity. This music belongs to us. This music belongs to everyone.
Open your ears to hear and understand something that you perhaps don't understand, which is that excellence comes in all people.
Going from 2 to see if this works now with the cellos divided.
The mission of Gateways Music Festival is to connect and support professional classical musicians of African descent and enrich and enlighten communities through the power of performance. Gateways is growing exponentially. We have 125 musicians now. When I first started with Gateways, maybe the full orchestra was 65, so it's doubled.
I've been involved with Gateways since it came to Rochester in 1995. There is a passion for this festival. It's palpable. There is an added ingredient that is the product of shared life experiences that the musicians largely don't get anyplace else.
And the un poco più mosso, that's Italian for hurtling through space.
The thing that's most striking about the Gateways Music Festival is when you see a complete stage, a complete symphony orchestra that is entirely African American, because you just never do. And then, of course, to hear it, the level of players is tremendous.
There's so many discussions in the field about how few African Americans there are and the dearth of players and talent that supposedly exists. And when you concentrate that on one stage as large as Eastman Theater, it demonstrates quite the contrary.
When the Gateways Festival Orchestra walks out on stage, a new line of inquiry or a new conversation is opened with the audience before we've even played a note. Because the backdrop of classical music is that this is a white art form.
The Eastman School of Music has been a supporter of Gateways Music Festival since the very beginning, but kind of behind the scenes. We really needed more support because the festival is growing so quickly. And so the University of Rochester and Eastman School of Music have become partners with Gateways so that we can grow this festival because it's important.
Classical music has not traditionally reflected the population of our country as a whole. I want Eastman to be part of anything that celebrates great music and great music making. And the fact to celebrate this particular area of African American ancestry, I think is just fantastic for Eastman.
We might be few in numbers where we are, but when I come to Gateways, I'm one of many.
There's something so incredibly profound and powerful of seeing other people that look like you know, and do what you do at the level that you do it.
You could just feel the love in the room, looking around, people's smiling faces, you know. It's uplifting. I wish I could bottle this up and take it home with me, you know. It's energizing, it's family, it's love, it's heart, it's soul, it's music.
I personally struggle, and always have, with a sense of hopelessness about race in America. When I see that stage, thinking, no, just maybe, it feels really good to see people on that stage, and it eases my sense of hopelessness.
Thank you everyone for watching that video. It's always nice to see Paul Burgett, who was our former board chair and who we miss quite a bit. But Paul's passion for Gateways was real and authentic. As a Black violinist with, I think, all 3 of his degrees from the Eastman School of Music, he really understood the purpose of Gateways and its importance. I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of Gateways and our founder, beginning with our founder, Arminta Adams Hummings, as many people knew her when she was in Rochester, but now Hummings Dumasani, the founder of Gateways, an internationally celebrated classical pianist, one of the Juilliard 100, meaning that when Juilliard celebrated its 100th anniversary. She was named as one of its most prominent and important graduates. And she's a retired Eastman School of Music faculty. But more than that, she is a force of nature who has, if you don't know this, taken no medications in more than 50 or 60 years, and who climbed Mount Kilimanjaro at the age of 78. So Arminta is, by all definitions, a force of nature. She's originally from Cleveland, Ohio, but her parents made the decision early on, when she was about 4 years old, to enroll her and her brother, who became a virtuoso violinist, in the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston. She went on from the New England Conservatory to earn both a bachelor's and a master's degree from the Juilliard School, graduating with honors and winning the school's prestigious concerto competition. In the United States, however, in the 1950s, due to racism and segregation, there were very few opportunities for a virtuoso Black female concert pianist to earn a living after she graduated. So she spent many years concertizing abroad under the auspices of the US State Department, representing a country which was less than welcoming. During her time at Eastman and University of Rochester and Gateways Music Festival, Arminta rarely performed. She wanted the focus to be on the musicians and on the community and on the music, but not on herself. So many people in Rochester who knew her and know her may have never heard her play before. And so I thought that I would take just 2 minutes for you to listen to a clip of Arminta playing a Bach chorale that's been arranged for piano called Rejoice Ye Christians. It is about 2 minutes long, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for listening to that. I recall playing this for a group of young students, and they said, well, does she just have 2 hands? That was Arminta with just 2 hands playing that extraordinary piece, Rejoice Ye Christians by Johann Sebastian Bach. That same level artistic excellence formed the basis of Gateways upon its founding and has continued to this day. Gateways was founded in 1993 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is where Armenta was living at that time. And it relocated to Rochester when Armenta was invited to join the faculty of the Eastman School of Music in 1995. She created Gateways to provide a safe and affirming place for classical musicians of African descent and to provide them with a community. She named the festival Gateways to represent the breaking down of barriers for classical musicians and for audiences alike. In 2016, while retaining its independence as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, Gateways entered into a formal partnership with the Eastman School of Music and the University of Rochester. And this partnership was spearheaded by the Eastman Dean, Jamal Rossi, our former Gateways board chair, Paul Burgett, and the former University of Rochester president, Joel Seligman. The festival has a double mission, a dual mission, if you will. One part that is focused on the musicians, and the other that's focused on the audience. Our mission is to connect and support professional classical musicians of African descent and enlighten and inspire communities through the power of performance. Gateways is unique. There are other organizations in the country, a couple of other organizations that are often confused with Gateways, but there are a lot of things that are very unique about Gateways, and certainly the fact that we are not a diversity initiative. While we believe certainly strongly in diversity and support diversity initiatives, it is not our primary objective. Our primary objective is to serve as an antidote to the isolation and underestimation experienced by many classical musicians of African descent, and to provide them with a vibrant and supportive community where they are affirmed and where they can find an artistic home. In addition to calling attention to the important role of people of African descent in classical music, and that role that they've had for centuries, the image of Gateways Music Festival Orchestra offers a counter narrative, as you heard in the video by Alex Lang, to the stereotypical images many have of classical musicians. And while Gateways supports the efforts of other disenfranchised ethnic and racial groups, Gateways' efforts have always been unapologetically Black and focused on issues related to people of African descent, regardless of their nationality, in response to ongoing anti-Black racism in the United States and throughout the world. And why is Gateways important? These are some of the reasons that we believe that Gateways is important. One is that it increases the visibility of classical musicians of African descent. Most of our musicians come from the United States. They are probably 1/3 members of symphony orchestras, another third are faculty at music schools and conservatories, and the others are freelancers, active freelancers in major cities around the country. Most of our musicians come from the United States, but we also have musicians every year from Germany, England, South Africa, the Dominican Republic, Canada, and Brazil. And this year, a musician born and raised in Russia will join the festival orchestra. We also want to reaffirm and revitalize classical musicians of African descent. I think you could see in the video what the experience of being with folks who have a shared life experience, what that means to the Gateways musicians. And importantly for Gateways and for Armenta in particularly, is the enrichment of community life. That was essential for Armenta. And we also want to celebrate a legacy. There have been people of African descent involved in what we now call classical music for centuries. It looks like we have our former mayor there at the top, who's not supposed to be there, but is there for some reason in that picture, but it's nice to see her. But people of African descent have been involved in classical music for centuries. From the courts of, and you'll see on the left here, I'll go back, from the courts of English kings Henry VII and Henry VIII to 18th century Paris. Beethoven even wrote and premiered one of his most famous violin sonatas for the Black violinist George Bridgetower, who's third from the left. And in a deep connection to Rochester, Frederick Douglass was an accomplished violinist, and his grandson, Joseph Douglass, maintained a very successful career as a concert violinist. Gateways helps us remember these contributions and this important legacy. Here are a few of the festival's recent achievements, and then I'll take a break before proceeding to answer any questions you might have. And these are just a few of the accomplishments that Gateways has experienced over the last 4 or 5 years. We have been the feature of a cover and article for Symphony Magazine, which is our classical music industry's leading publication. We've won 6 grants from the National Endowment for the Arts for artistic excellence and service to the community, including a $150,000 grant just a few weeks ago as part of the American Rescue Plan. Our performances from the festival have been broadcast on Performance Today, which is one of the nation's most listened to classical music programs, with 1.2 million listeners on 237 stations. And most recently, Gateways will become the first all-Black classical symphony orchestra to be presented by Carnegie Hall in its 130-year history. And while other Black orchestras have performed at Carnegie Hall, it is important to note that Gateways will be the first orchestra presented by Carnegie Hall and to appear on their regular season. So that's something that we're incredibly proud about. So Catherine, I'll stop and take a pause here and ask if anyone might have any questions or comments.
Lee, we do have one question. For the festival, are most of the musicians from Rochester?
They are not. In fact, there is only, there's usually 1 or 2 from Rochester. One member is Herb Smith, of course, who plays in the Rochester Philharmonic and is the only Black player in the orchestra. And another player is Heather Masula, who's a faculty at the Hochstein School of Music. And usually those are the only 2 musicians from Rochester. And, in general, all of our musicians are professionals, so we don't generally have any student musicians. So even though there are some Black students at Eastman, because the festival's focus is on professional classical musicians, the students generally are not participants in Gateways.
Great, thank you. And for those of you who do have a question, feel free to submit them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer them throughout the program.
All right, thank you very much for that question, and please ask more. So our core programs include, of course, the Gateways Orchestra, which you've heard on the video, chamber music in the community, which in Rochester is incredibly extensive, and many of you may have heard chamber music groups at your house of worship, at a church, at a synagogue, at some other place in Rochester. It's a very important part of Gateways programs. And it was very important to Arminta, who felt that Gateways should always be connected to the community. Our Young Musicians Institute is something that we started, I think, in 2017, and it provides an opportunity for Rochester area youth or the youth in whatever town we happen to be in going forward, have an opportunity to interact and perform with Gateways musicians. There are always cultural programs, and that includes film series, lecture series, panel discussions, art exhibits, other things that help provide context to the musical experience. And again, community engagement is essential to our core programming, and our extraordinary volunteers have supported Gateways since the beginning. And our Rochester volunteers are 100% responsible for Gateways success today. Without our Rochester volunteers, I can assure you there would be no Gateways today. In addition to acting as de facto staff, they have contributed to Gateways. They have raised money for Gateways. And so whatever success we enjoy today is certainly due to the involvement and engagement of our community. And then our fourth area of programming, which is expanding as we speak, is our network of Black musicians. And ironically, the pandemic has helped us expand that community by allowing us to have more virtual activities in which people, our musicians from around the country, can participate in Gateways activities and symposium and discussions. On this next screen, I'd like to call your attention to something that we're doing that we started in June, our daily showcase. For those of you who have not seen it, every single day on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, Gateways post a feature about a Black classical musician. And we've been doing this since June of this past year and expect to do it forever. And the importance here is, especially now that we are in Black History Month, is to demonstrate that people of African descent and classical music exist beyond just the month of February, but that we exist throughout the year and throughout the entire world. And so this feature, I invite you all to join us and be friends with Gateways on Facebook and follow Gateways on Instagram or Facebook so that you can receive these daily updates of Black classical musicians. And in addition to the photo, there's also a very short, usually one paragraph bio. And between now and the upcoming festival, we're featuring our musicians who are performing in the orchestra. So you can see each one of those musicians featured on a daily basis. And here's some interesting kind of tidbits about their personal lives, what their favorite movies might be, what was the best advice they've ever received. So I encourage you to go onto social media and check those out. In our preparation meeting, one of the things, one of the planners, Gaia Shakes, asked me was, well, tell us a little bit about the artistic process. And I have to say that no one's ever asked that before. So I'm really excited to talk about it because the artistic process for a festival-based organization is different than it would be for an organization like, for instance, the Rochester Philharmonic, which has a full-time resident orchestra. So our process begins with the Artistic Programs Committee, that committee that Arminta founded back in 2009. It was initially composed of just Eastman grads, maybe 8 or 9 Eastman grads, but now that committee's maybe 20 Gateways musicians from all different backgrounds and institutions. And they serve as kind of the artistic leadership of the Gateways Music Festival. And in addition to many other things, they, along with the music director, are responsible for determining the repertoire, especially for the orchestra, but also for chamber music. And so over a course of months and months and hours-long meetings, our repertoire for the orchestra and much of the repertoire for chamber music is determined by this committee. We now make invitations to musicians to participate in Gateways. There was a time when we had an audition or an application process, but the musicians felt that an invitation process was a better process and a more inclusive process because there are musicians that we're inviting of a stature who we would not want to ask to fill out an application. So the musicians developed this process for invitations, and it has worked very well for the festival. That said, in 2019, when we had an application and invitation process kind of combined, we turned away more than 200 musicians who wanted to participate in the festival. And there is a similar number of musicians this year who want to participate that we're just not able to accommodate. So after the repertoire has been selected for the orchestra and chamber music, parts are sent to all of the musicians around the country, around the world, usually 9 months out, if not sooner. So the musicians received all of the parts and the scores for this upcoming festival back in April and May of last year, so nearly 12 months out, so that they can prepare and learn their parts and learn the entire orchestra, the score from home. And then when they arrive in Rochester, there are full orchestra rehearsals and sectionals where all the pieces, all the components are put together in a very, very short time. In this festival, I think that there will be 3 orchestra rehearsals before the concert at Carnegie Hall on Wednesday, the 20th. And I'll tell you about that in just a minute. Many of you may know that our longtime conductor and music director, Michael Morgan, passed away in 2021. And we're thrilled that we've found a person in Anthony Parther to replace him for the Carnegie Hall concert. Of course, there is really no replacement for Michael. He conducted the very first Gateways in 1993 and is one of the most unique and different conductors, most unique and different conductors in the country. So the musicians selected Anthony Parther as our new conductor. He was their top choice. He's a bassoonist and a conductor. He is the conductor of the San Bernardino Symphony, and the Southeast Symphony and chorus, both in Los Angeles, California. But his primary work is in Hollywood. And he has conducted more than 750 films with the Hollywood Studio Orchestra, including the recently Grammy-nominated Disney's Encanto. He's conducted many of the Star Wars movies, including The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett, and many, many, many others. I've said often that he is probably a conductor that all of you have heard before, but not known of. So if you've seen any major Hollywood movies in the last 10 or so years, it is very likely that you've heard some of Anthony's work. So now a little bit about the upcoming festival, or maybe I should pause there, Catherine, and ask if there are any further questions or comments.
Yes, we do have another question. You speak about the power of performance. How does this compare to the visual arts?
Well, I think that that mission statement was devised by our musicians and the board, and we feel that there is so much that can be communicated through music and through the art of music making. Our work in the community, when we take the performances into the community, when we're in concert halls, the art brings people together. The music brings people together. It bridges boundaries. And I think the same would be true of the visual arts. It brings people together. It bridges boundaries. There is power in the music, and there's also power in visual arts. And I think that's the message that our musicians were trying to communicate with that mission statement.
Great. What is the age range of the musicians?
Well, everybody won't tell us their age, but I would say that the majority of our players are mid-career musicians. So I would say the majority of our players are in their 40s and 50s. Though this year we'll have some players, a player who was, oh my gosh, I think he was with the Philadelphia Orchestra for 40 or 50 years. And we'll have a panelist who was principal harp of the of the Boston Symphony Orchestra for more than 35 years. So we have majority of our players are kind of that mid-career, 40s and 50s.
Thank you. And you're probably going to answer this in your next section, but is the festival held annually?
Yes, that is new. Yes, the festival is now annual. For much of our history, it was every other year. The festival will be annual. It started being annual as of 2019. So we had a virtual festival in 2021. And initially we were scheduled to be at Carnegie Hall in the fall of 2021. I'm sorry, we had a virtual festival in 2020, and we were scheduled to be in Carnegie Hall, Rochester, and New York City in 2021, but that was postponed until the spring. So we actually skipped 2021, but yes, we are now an annual festival.
Thank you. That's all we
All right.
have right now.
Okay, great, thanks. So this upcoming festival is our first kind of dual city festivals. And the dates in Rochester are April 18th through the 20th. And we begin on Monday, the 18th, with a piano recital at Hatch Hall, Eastman School of Music, featuring 5 really, truly extraordinary pianists. And including a world premiere by Joe Williams, the pianist on the far right there, who will present a brand new piano sonata by the renowned composer Raphael Neighbors. So that world premiere will take place in Rochester at that particular concert. On Tuesday, we'll have our Paul Burgett lecture series that begins with the film screening of the film Caged Bird, The Life and Music of Florence B. Price, and a lecture by Eastman School of Music faculty and University of Rochester faculty, Corey Hunter, talking about the music of Florence Price. This is a repeat from the 2019 festival. Some of you may have heard that lecture and saw that film. And we are recreating that and representing it because the major piece on this year's program in Rochester and in New York City is Florence Price's 3rd Symphony. And then on Wednesday, we present the full Gateways Orchestra with our new conductor, Anthony Parther, in a program of Brahms, the variations on the theme by Haydn, George Walker, Symphonia No. 3, the Symphony No. 3 by Florence Price, and concluding with James Cochran's fantasy on Lift Every Voice and Sing. And then on Thursday, we move to New York City. The musicians travel to New York City on Thursday morning. Our opening concert is with the Imani Winds, our guest artist for the festival, at the historic Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, which I believe is the oldest Black congregation in the United States, or in New York State. An extraordinary location and venue in history with an extraordinary group of artists. On Friday, we begin the day with a panel discussion with our host, Terrence McKnight from WQXR, which is New York City's classical music radio station, and a panelist including Ann Hobson-Pilot, Titus Underwood, and me talking about the lives of Black classical musicians. And in New York, we are recreating our chamber music in the community idea, but a little bit differently. And we're calling it Gateways Around the Town. We have 5 simultaneous programs going on throughout all of New York City, beginning with that piano group of 5 pianists at Steinway Hall in New York City, our new Gateways Piano Quartet at the Morgan Library and Museum, our Gateways Brass Collective at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Marian Anderson String Quartet at the 92nd Street Y, and then another guest artist recital, the Harlem Chamber Players at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture at the Schomburg Schomburg Center for Black Research and Black Culture in Harlem. Sorry about that. And then on Saturday, after that grueling day of performances, all happening simultaneously, we have a calmer day on Friday with a repeat of the film screening and lecture at the Cooper Union in downtown Manhattan, followed by a chamber music recital featuring all of the groups that performed on the prior day. And if you don't know of the Cooper Union, this performance will be in the Great Hall, which is one of the most renowned locations in New York City. It is the location of one of Abraham Lincoln's most famous speeches. And so when we selected this location, one of the things we talked about was the other historic place in Rochester where Gateways performs, which is certainly the Hochstein School of Music and its connection to Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony. So now we're going to yet another famous and historic hall at the Cooper Union in the Great Hall. And on Sunday, the final performance is our Gateways Orchestra concert, which is similar to the concert in Rochester, except that it includes the world premiere of a new piece by John Batiste, who many of you may know is the music director of the Stephen Colbert Show. And I believe this year was nominated for more Grammys than anybody else. 11 or 12 Grammys he was nominated for. And he's writing a new piece for the Gateways Orchestra for narrator and orchestra. And we hope to have a very exciting announcement soon about that narrator and the piece that John will use for the narration. So that's our lineup for the 2022 festival. I'd like to invite all of you to participate and attend the events in Rochester and perhaps come to New York. We are offering a tour for anyone in Rochester, actually from anyone around the country, anyone around the world who would like to join us in New York City. There are 2 packages available. There's a 3-day package. You can join us in New York City from Friday through Sunday, or the 2-day package from Saturday through Sunday. And the packages all include performances to every performance and every event, or tickets to every performance and every event. The tour includes in-town transportation. It includes lodging at a centrally located hotel, the same location the musicians are staying, invitations to VIP events, and other kind of personalized experiences. And you can find more information about that on our website, which is gatewaysmusicfestival.org. And if you click on the purchase tickets, you can certainly find access to all the tickets for all the events. And I'll go there now so that you can see what that looks like if it opens up. And I think it does. So you can purchase all the tickets here. There are free events and there are events that require a fee. But in Rochester and in New York City, you can get your tickets. And then if you're interested in the Friends of Gateways tour, you can also find that information here on our website in the 3-day package and the 2-day package. And there's a lot of incredible demand for this tour. It's really surprising. We've got folks who are coming from Georgia, has a group of like 100 people. They're bringing from Georgia for this New York City engagement. So it's a really exciting time for the festival, and we hope that you'll be able to join it. And with that, I would like to conclude and ask if there are any further questions or any comments or anything else I might be able to add.
No further questions right now, Lee, so continue.
That's actually it for me. I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to present about Gateways Music Festival. And I actually see a question coming in. Did you want to read that, Catherine?
Sure. John Batiste is usually seen as a jazz musician. It is usual for musicians of African descent to be multidisciplined. That's the question, I'm sorry. Is it usually, usual for musicians of African descent to be multidisciplined?
Yes. Gaia, you asked the best questions ever. Yes, John is considered by most people a jazz and popular musician, but many Black classical musicians are multi-talented and play different forms of music and write music and do other things. In fact, I didn't include it in our slide presentation, my slide presentation today, because we're still working out the details. But in 2019, we started the Gateways After Hours, which features our Gateways musicians playing non-classical music. And in Rochester in 2019, we were at a club downtown, name I can't remember right now.
Anthropology.
That's right, Anthropology. And the musicians, were you there, Gaia, for that?
Yes.
What did you think about it?
I loved it.
It was quite extraordinary to see, the principal timpani player of the New Mexico Symphony playing set drums, or one of our first violinists playing, an electric bass. So our Gateways musicians, like many Black classical musicians, are very well versed in many forms of music. And so John Batiste, who happens to be from New Orleans, which is where, I think all the great musicians seem to be from, comes from a background that is really varied. And so I think that this piece will incorporate much of his background. So it will probably include some jazz, it will probably include some classical, some contemporary music, and everything in between. He is an extraordinarily well-trained musician. He's a graduate of the Juilliard School of Music, and he is one of Carnegie Hall's, I think they're calling him one of their prospective artists this year. So he is presenting 3 concerts at Carnegie Hall this year, and each one is different. And I think each one features or focuses on one of his kind of special areas of interest. And so we're really thrilled that at Gateways, he happens to be the composer of this world premiere piece for the Gateways Orchestra. I think I saw another one, Catherine.
Lee, yes, can you read the chat there for a moment?
Let's see, I'll pull it up.
If you have any further questions, you can feel free to ask in the Q&A. Otherwise, we will be wrapping the program shortly.
All right.
Are you going to do the Lift Every Voice?
We are. It has become the signature piece for the Gateways Orchestra, and the musicians love playing it. They have asked to do the piece this year conductorless, and it will be a tribute to Michael Morgan, in memoriam to Michael Morgan. So it will be a very special experience this year for them to perform that particular piece. And I saw your comment, Catherine. There is no more music, but I could play a lot more if I knew.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lee. And we look forward to seeing more during the festival.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Lee. That was absolutely wonderful. I had a smile on my face the entire time and a tear in my eye a couple of times. So it was great. I plan on going to the festival in April in Rochester, and I really we all wish you best wishes for your Carnegie Hall debut. Our next program is March 16th. Please look for your email to register. The speakers are brother and sister Lana and Dejan Pejovic, and they will discuss how culture and environment influence art. And it should be very interesting. So thank you all for being here. And thank you again to Mr. Koonce. Good night. Goodbye.
Thank you.